It was a bright, sunny Saturday morning, the kind of day that makes you want to be outside. Perfect weather for a garage sale. My name's Jake, and I'm just a regular guy. I had some old stuff I didn't need anymore, like bike parts, a rusty lamp, and a bunch of other things I'd been keeping in my garage for way too long. I thought, hey, why not sell this stuff and make a few bucks? So, I dragged a little table out to my driveway, set everything up nice and neat, and waited for people to come by. A few neighbors showed up pretty quick. One guy poked at the bike parts, and a lady asked if the lamp still worked. It felt like a normal day. Everything was going fine, or at least, that's what I thought. But then, I noticed something. Across the street, there was Karen. Yep, that Karen. If you don't know what I mean by that Karen, let me tell you. She's the kind of neighbor who's always watching, always complaining, and always acting like she's the boss of everyone. She's got short hair, a loud voice, and a frown that never goes away. I could see her through her window blinds, just staring at me. Her eyes were sharp, like she was mad about something already. I didn't think much of it at first. Karen's always grumpy. Maybe she didn't like that I was having a garage sale. Maybe she didn't like the noise of my neighbors chatting. I figured she'd just huff and puff a little, then go back to whatever she does all day. Oh boy, was I wrong about that. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping, and my garage sale was just getting started. I had a box of old toys, some books with bent pages, and even a chair with a wobbly leg. I put little price tags on everything, 50 cents here, $1 there. It wasn't much, but I didn't care. I just wanted to clean out my garage and maybe make someone happy with a good deal. My neighbor Tom came over first. He's a big guy with a loud laugh, and he started digging through the bike parts right away. Jake, you fixing bikes now? He asked, holding up a rusty chain. I laughed and said, nah, just getting rid of junk. Then Mrs. Linda from next door showed up. She's older, with gray hair and a nice smile. She picked up the lamp and turned it over in her hands. Does this still light up? She asked. I shrugged. Maybe with a new bulb. She nodded and kept looking around. It felt good, you know. People were stopping by, the day was warm, and I was finally getting rid of stuff I didn't need. I even had a little jar on the table for the money. A few coins clinked inside already, 2 quarters and a dime. Not a lot, but it was a start. I leaned back in my folding chair, sipping some lemonade I'd made, thinking this was going to be an easy, fun day. That's when I saw Karen again. She wasn't just peeking through the blinds anymore. Now she was standing on her porch, arms crossed, staring right at me. Her face looked like she'd just bitten into a sour lemon. I waved at her, trying to be nice. Morning, Karen. I called out. She didn't wave back. She didn't even blink. She just kept staring, like I'd done something terrible. I started to wonder what her problem was. Was it the table? It wasn't blocking anything. Was it the people? There were only 3 neighbors there, and they were quiet. Maybe she didn't like garage sales at all. Karen's one of those people who loves rules. She's part of the HOA, that's the group that makes rules for our neighborhood. They decide stuff like what color your house can be or how tall your grass can grow. Karen's always telling people what they're doing wrong. Your dog barked too loud, she'd yell at Mr. Peterson. Your trash can's out too early, she'd snap at Mrs. Linda. She even told me once that my mailbox looked too old. I didn't even know mailboxes could be too old. So, yeah, Karen's a complainer. I figured she'd march over eventually and tell me some rule I was breaking. Maybe she'd say garage sales weren't allowed. Maybe she'd say my table was too close to the street. I didn't know yet, but I could feel it coming. Her staring was like a warning. My neighbors didn't seem to notice her, though. Tom was still messing with the bike parts, and Mrs. Linda was looking at a cracked teapot I'd put out. Another guy, Sam, showed up too. He lives a few houses down and always wears a baseball cap. Hey, Jake, got any tools? He asked. I pointed to a little box of screwdrivers and a hammer. Take a look, I said. He grinned and started digging in. Everything still felt okay, but Karen's glare was starting to bug me. I tried to ignore her. I told myself, she's just being Karen. She'll grumble and go away. But deep down, I wasn't so sure. There was something about the way she was watching, like she was planning something. I glanced at her again, and this time, she turned away fast, like she didn't want me to catch her looking. That's when I got a funny feeling in my stomach. Not a scared feeling, just curious. What was she up to? Was she really that mad about a few old things on a table? Or was there something else going on? The day was still young, and my garage sale was just getting going. The sun climbed higher, warming up the driveway. A breeze rustled the trees, and I could hear kids laughing a few streets over. It was a perfect Saturday except for Karen. She went back inside her house, but I knew she wasn't done. I could almost picture her pacing around, muttering to herself, figuring out how to ruin my day. I didn't know what she'd do yet, but I had a hunch it'd be big. And here's the best part, this story's about to get wild. What do you think Karen's going to do next? Is she just going to yell at me, or is something crazier coming? Stick around, because trust me, this gets good. By noon, the sun was high in the sky, and my garage sale was still going. I'd sold a few things like the rusty lamp to Mrs. Linda and some bike parts to Tom. My little money jar had a couple of dollars in it now, and I was feeling pretty good. But then, everything changed. Karen came stomping across the street. Her arms were crossed tight, and her face was red like she was about to explode. When she opened her mouth, her voice was so loud it could wake up someone who'd been asleep forever. "This is against HOA rules," she yelled, pointing at my table like it was something bad, like a crime scene from a TV show. "No sales allowed without approval," she barked again. Her finger was shaking as she pointed at my stuffed old toys, a wobbly chair, and some books. I didn't get why she was so mad. It was just junk. I tried to stay calm, even though my heart was beating a little faster. "Karen," I said, keeping my voice nice and steady, "it's just a few bucks worth of stuff. I'm not hurting anyone." I smiled, hoping she'd chill out. But nope, she wasn't having it. Her eyes got big, and she shook her head like I'd said something crazy. "No excuses," she shouted. "You can't do this, Jake. I'm calling 911 right now." She yanked her phone out of her pocket and started tapping the screen. My neighbors, who were still looking at my stuff, stopped what they were doing. Tom, the big guy with the loud laugh, snickered a little. 911? For a garage sale, he said under his breath. Mrs. Linda put down the teapot she was holding and whispered to Sam, "She's overreacting again." Sam, the guy in the baseball cap, just grinned and kept digging through my box of tools. They all thought Karen was being silly. I did too, at first. Calling the police over a table of old junk? That sounded nuts. But Karen didn't care what we thought. She was on a mission, and she was loud about it. I leaned back in my chair, trying to act like it didn't bother me. "Okay, Karen," I said, "go ahead and call." I didn't think she'd really do it. I mean, who calls 911 over something this small? But she held the phone to her ear and started talking right away. "Yes, hello," she said, her voice sharp. "I need help. There's an illegal sale happening in my neighborhood." "Illegal?" I almost laughed. My table wasn't illegal, it was just messy. My neighbors giggled some more, and I shook my head. Karen was being Karen, like always. She loved making a big deal out of nothing. But here's the thing, while Karen was yelling into her phone, something caught my eye. 2 houses down the street, there was a car parked. It wasn't a normal car like the ones my neighbors drive. It was plain, kind of boring, with no stickers or anything fancy. An unmarked car. I'd seen cars like that on TV shows, the kind police use when they don't want you to know they're watching. Karen didn't see it. She was too busy shouting about my garage sale. But I saw it, and I couldn't stop looking. There were 2 people inside, just sitting there. They weren't moving or getting out. They were watching something, but I wasn't sure what yet. My stomach did a little flip. Not because I was scared, well, maybe a tiny bit, but because I had a hunch. A hunch is like a guess you feel deep down. I started thinking, why is that car here? What's going on? Karen was still talking on the phone, telling the 911 person all about my crime. "Yes, it's happening right now," she said. "Send someone quick." My neighbors were still laughing quietly, but I wasn't laughing anymore. That car made me curious. It was parked close to Karen's house, not mine. Were they watching her? Or me? I didn't know yet, but I had a feeling something bigger was brewing, like when you're waiting for a storm to hit. Karen hung up the phone and glared at me. "You're in trouble now, Jake," she said, crossing her arms again. "The police are coming, and you'll see I'm right." She looked so proud, like she'd just won a big prize. I didn't say anything back. I just nodded and sipped my lemonade, acting calm. Inside, though, my brain was buzzing. That unmarked car was still there, and the people inside hadn't moved an inch. I peeked at it again. The windows were dark, so I couldn't see their faces, but I could tell they weren't here for my garage sale. Something else was up. Tom walked over to me, holding a screwdriver he'd found. "She's nuts," he whispered, nodding toward Karen. "Cops won't care about this." I smiled and said, "Yeah, probably not." But I kept glancing at that car. Karen didn't notice it at all. She was too busy pacing back and forth in my driveway, muttering about rules and how I was ruining the neighborhood. Mrs. Linda rolled her eyes and picked up the teapot again. "She needs a hobby," she said softly. Sam chuckled and held up the hammer. "I'll take this for $1, he said. I nodded, but my mind wasn't on the sale anymore. It was on that car and on Karen. She kept going on and on. "The HOA says no sales without a form," she told me, like I hadn't heard her the first time. "You didn't fill out the form, Jake. That's why this is wrong." I shrugged. "I didn't know about a form," I said. It was true I'd never heard of it. But Karen didn't care. She just wanted to be mad. She pointed at my table again and said, "You'll see when the police get here." I didn't argue. I just watched her stomp around, her voice getting louder every second. My neighbors were starting to ignore her now, going back to shopping. But I couldn't ignore that car. The more I looked at it, the more I wondered. Why was it here? Why today? Karen thought she was in charge, calling 911 like she was some big hero. But what if she didn't know everything? What if something was about to happen that she didn't expect? I had this funny feeling like when you're about to open a present and you don't know what's inside. Karen was making a fuss, but maybe she was the one who should be worried. I didn't say anything, though. I just sat there, waiting to see what would happen next. And trust me, it was going to get interesting. Karen was on her phone now, and I decided to act like everything was fine. I grabbed a pile of old books from my table, some with ripped covers and bent pages, and started stacking them up nice and neat. I didn't want her to see that I was a little nervous. She was yelling into the phone, and I could hear every word. The 911 operator picked up, and Karen turned into a total drama queen. "There's an illegal sale happening right now," she shouted, her voice loud and squeaky. "Send someone quick." I almost laughed out loud. Cops coming for a garage sale? Really? That sounded so silly I had to bite my lip to keep quiet. My neighbors were still around, looking at my stuff. Tom was holding a bike chain, and Mrs. Linda was checking out a cracked teapot again. They didn't seem worried about Karen's big show. Sam, the guy with the baseball cap, even winked at me like it was all a joke. But while Karen was busy being loud, I kept sneaking looks at that unmarked car. It was still parked 2 houses down, just sitting there. It hadn't moved an inch. 2 guys were inside, wearing plain clothes, not police uniforms, just regular shirts and pants. They weren't looking at me or my table, though. Their eyes were stuck on Karen's house. That made me stop and think. I kept stacking my books, pretending I didn't care, but my brain was buzzing. Why were those guys watching Karen's place? What was going on? I started connecting the dots, like when you draw lines between stars to make a picture. See, Karen had been acting weird lately, not just her usual grumpy self, but something extra. A few days ago, I'd heard her talking to Mrs. Linda on her porch. She was bragging about some big deal she'd made. "I'm making tons of money now," she'd said, all proud and loud. "You'll see soon enough." Mrs. Linda just nodded and walked away, but I remembered it because Karen doesn't usually talk about money. She's more into yelling about rules. Was she hiding something? I wasn't sure yet, but that unmarked car made me wonder. Maybe her big deal wasn't what she said it was. Maybe it was something sneaky or even bad. I didn't say anything out loud, though. I just kept quiet and watched. Karen was still on the phone, waving her free hand around like she was in a play. Yes, it's a garage sale, she told the operator. No one approved it? It's against the rules. She sounded so serious, like my little table was the biggest problem in the world. I rolled my eyes and added another book to my stack. The sun was hot now, and a little sweat trickled down my back. My neighbors kept shopping, acting like Karen wasn't even there. Tom dropped a quarter in my money jar and said, "This chain's mine." I nodded and smiled, but my eyes flicked back to that car. The two guys inside were still staring at Karen's house. One of them had a little notebook, and I saw him write something down. That made my stomach wiggle a bit. Police do that on TV, write stuff down when they're watching someone. Were they police? They didn't have uniforms, but that car looked sneaky enough to belong to cops. Karen finally hung up the phone and turned to me. "They're coming," she said, her voice sharp like a teacher catching you chewing gum. "You're going to be sorry, Jake." She crossed her arms and stood there, waiting for me to freak out. But I didn't. I just shrugged and said, "Okay, Karen. We'll see." She huffed, like she couldn't believe I wasn't scared. Truth is, I wasn't worried about the police coming for me. My garage sale wasn't a big deal. A few bucks for old junk? That's not a crime. But that car, those guys watching Karen, that was starting to feel like a mystery. I picked up a toy truck from my table and turned it over in my hands, acting busy. My mind was racing, though. What if Karen's big deal was something shady? She'd been extra bossy lately, even for her. Last week, she'd yelled at Sam for parking his truck too close to her driveway. "Move it, or I'll report you," she'd snapped. Sam just laughed and moved it, but Karen acted like she owned the whole street. Maybe she was hiding something, and that's why she was so mean all the time. Maybe those guys in the car knew about it? The air felt thicker now, like something big was about to happen. My neighbors didn't notice, they were too busy digging through my stuff. Mrs. Linda put a dime in my jar and said, "I'll take this teapot." I smiled and said, "Thanks," but I kept sneaking peeks at Karen. She was pacing back and forth in my driveway, muttering to herself. "No one listens to the rules," she grumbled. "This neighborhood's a mess." She didn't see the car, though. She didn't see the guys watching her every move. But I did, and it made me feel like I was in on a secret. I started thinking back to other things Karen had done. A month ago, she'd put a big package in her car late at night. I saw it because I was taking out my trash. It looked heavy, and she kept looking around, like she didn't want anyone to see. At the time, I didn't care, maybe it was just groceries. But now, with that car sitting there, it felt weird. What if her big deal wasn't just talk? What if she was up to something she didn't want us to know about? I didn't have proof, but the pieces were starting to fit together in my head. Karen stopped pacing and pointed at me again. "You'll learn to follow the rules, Jake," she said. I just nodded, keeping my cool. "Sure, Karen," I replied, stacking one last book. She glared at me, waiting for the police to show up and prove her right. But I wasn't thinking about her anymore. I was thinking about that car and those two guys. They weren't moving, but they weren't leaving either. Their eyes stayed on Karen's house, like they were waiting for something to. I had a hunch it wasn't about my garage sale. Something bigger was coming, and Karen didn't even know it. Minutes ticked by after Karen's big 911 call, and I was still sitting at my table, trying to look calm. The sun was blazing, and my lemonade was almost gone. My neighbors were still poking around my stuff. Tom had his bike chain, and Mrs. Linda was holding her teapot like a prize. Karen stood in my driveway, arms crossed, looking smug. She kept glancing down the street, waiting for the police to show up and prove she was right. I kept my eyes on that unmarked car, though. Those two guys were still inside, watching her house. My stomach felt all twisty, like something huge was about to happen. And then it did. A patrol car rolled up, its lights flashing red and blue. It stopped right in front of my house, and Karen's face lit up like she'd just won a game. She smirked at me, her eyes all narrow and proud. "See? I told you," she crowed, her voice loud and happy. "The police are here now, Jake. You're in trouble." She clapped her hands together once, like she couldn't wait to watch me get yelled at. The officer stepped out of the patrol car, a tall guy with a serious face and a blue uniform. Karen pointed at my table and started talking fast. "That's the illegal sale," she said. "No approval. Against the rules." I stayed quiet, just watching. My neighbors stopped what they were doing and looked over too. Tom whispered, "She's really doing this, huh?" And Sam shook his head, grinning. I thought the officer would come to me first, maybe ask about my garage sale. But he didn't. He didn't even look at my table. Instead, something wild happened. The doors of that unmarked car 2 houses down popped open. 2 guys stepped out, and they weren't wearing uniforms like the officer. They had plain clothes, jeans and jackets, but then I saw something shiny. Badges. They flashed them quick, holding them up so everyone could see. Detectives? My heart started beating faster. The officer from the patrol car kept walking, straight past my table. The 2 detectives were right behind him, moving fast. Karen didn't notice at first, she was too busy smirking at me. But then one of the detectives stopped in front of her and said, "Karen Mitchell." His voice was firm, like a teacher calling your name when you're in trouble. Karen's smirk disappeared. Her face went white, like all the color drained out of it. "What's this about?" she stammered, her voice shaky now. She took a tiny step back, clutching her phone tight. The detective didn't smile. He just stared at her, and the other guy stood close, watching her every move. I couldn't believe it. The police weren't here for me, they were here for Karen. My neighbors gasped. Mrs. Linda put her teapot down, and Tom's mouth dropped open. Sam pulled off his baseball cap and scratched his head, like he was trying to figure it out. I leaned forward in my chair, eyes wide. What was happening? The detective started talking again, and that's when the big reveal came out. "We've been watching you, Ms. Mitchell," he said, pulling a little notebook from his pocket. "Your big deal you've been bragging about? We know all about it." Karen blinked fast. "What deal?" she said, but her voice was all wobbly, like she was scared. The detective didn't back down. "You've been selling fake designer bags online," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Pretending they're real, taking people's money, thousands of dollars. It's a scam." My jaw dropped. A scam? Karen. That big deal she'd told Mrs. Linda about, it wasn't some smart business thing. It was a trick. She'd been lying to people, selling them junk bags and acting like they were fancy. I remembered her bragging about making tons of money. Now it made sense, she'd been cheating people. The detective kept going. "We've been building a case for weeks," he said. "We've got proof, pictures, messages, everything." Karen shook her head, her hands shaking now. No, that's not true," she yelled. "You've got the wrong person." But the officer stepped closer, and the other detective pulled out some papers. "We've got a warrant," he said. "A warrant means they had permission to take her away." My garage sale? It didn't matter at all. It was just a coincidence, a funny little thing that happened while the cops were already watching her. Karen's eyes darted around, like she wanted to run. "This is about him," she shouted, pointing at me again. "His sale is illegal." The officer finally glanced at my table, old books, a wobbly chair, some toys. He raised an eyebrow and said, "Looks fine to me." Then he turned back to Karen. "This isn't about a garage sale, ma'am. It's about you." Her face crumpled. She didn't look smug anymore. She looked small and scared, like a kid caught stealing candy. My neighbors started whispering. "Fake bags," Mrs. Linda said softly. "She told me she was doing great." Tom laughed. "Guess she wasn't so smart after all." I just sat there, amazed. All this time, Karen had been acting like she was better than everyone, yelling about rules, calling 911 on me. But she was the one doing something wrong. The detectives had been in that unmarked car, waiting for the right moment. My little sale just gave them a chance to step in. Karen kept stammering, trying to talk her way out. "I didn't mean to," she said. "It's a mistake." But the officer shook his head. "Tell it to the judge," he said, pulling out handcuffs. Handcuffs. They were really going to take her away. The air felt electric, like a storm had just hit. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't stop watching. Karen had thought she'd won, she'd called the cops to get me in trouble. But now, the cops were here for her. It was like a movie twist, the kind that makes you gasp and cheer. She'd been so loud, so sure of herself, and now she was caught. My garage sale was just a tiny thing, a table of junk that didn't matter. But Karen's scam? That was huge, and it was all falling apart right in front of us. What a day. Karen wasn't going down without a fight. She stood there in my driveway, her face all red and sweaty, trying to argue with the detectives. "This is wrong," she shouted, waving her hands around. "You can't do this to me." But the detectives weren't playing her game. They didn't even blink. One of them held up some papers, a warrant. "That's a special note that says they can take her away." "We've got everything we need," he said, calm and firm. Karen's eyes got big, and she shook her head fast. "No, no, no," she yelled. "I didn't do anything bad." But it was too late. The other detective stepped closer, and the officer from the patrol car pulled out handcuffs. They clicked them onto Karen's wrist. Snap, snap. She kept talking, louder now. "I have HOA rights," she screamed as they started walking her to the patrol car. "You can't arrest me. I'm in charge here." Her voice bounced off the houses, but no one cared. The detectives just kept moving, and the officer held her arm so she couldn't wiggle away. My neighbors watched with wide eyes, and then get this, they started clapping. Tom, the big guy with the bike chain, put his hands together first. Clap, clap, clap. Then Mrs. Linda joined in, smiling big. Sam, still holding my hammer, clapped too. It was like a little party right there in my driveway. Karen glared back at us, her face all twisted up, but she couldn't stop them from taking her. The patrol car door opened, and they helped her inside. She was still yelling about rules and rights as the door shut. Then the car drove off, lights flashing, and she was gone. I just stood there, amazed. My mouth was open a little because I couldn't believe what I'd seen. Karen, the loud, bossy lady who'd called 911 on my garage sale, was in handcuffs. My neighbors didn't stop cheering. Some of them even came back to my table to buy stuff, like it was a way to celebrate. Mrs. Linda dropped another dime in my jar. "I'll take this old cup too," she said, giggling. Tom grabbed a rusty wrench and tossed me a quarter. "Best sale ever," he said with a laugh. Sam paid his dollar for the hammer and winked. She got what she deserved. The officer, the one in the blue uniform, walked over to me before he left. He looked at my table, now half empty, and gave me a little nod. "Nice sale," he said, grinning like we were buddies. "Thanks," I mumbled, still shocked. He tipped his hat and headed back to his car. The detectives were already gone, driving off in their unmarked car. My driveway got quiet again, but it felt different now, like the air was lighter. By the end of the day, my table was empty. Every single thing, books, toys, the wobbly chair, was sold. My money jar jingled with coins and a few dollar bills. I'd made maybe $10, but that wasn't the big win. The real win was watching Karen get caught. She'd thought she was so smart, calling the police on me, but they were already after her. My neighbors stayed a little longer, chatting and laughing about it. "She's been bossing us around forever," Mrs. Linda said. "About time she learned a lesson." Tom nodded. "Karma's funny like that." I cleaned up my table and folded my chair, still smiling. The sun was going down, painting the sky orange and pink. Everything felt good, like the day had turned out way better than I'd planned. A week later, I saw something else. A big for sale sign popped up in Karen's yard. Her house was empty, windows dark, no more yelling from the porch. I guess she had to move after all that trouble. My neighbors said she'd never come back. And me? I just kept thinking about how wild it all was. So, here's the thing I learned that day: sometimes the loudest people have the most to hide. Karen was like that. She was always yelling, always pointing fingers, always acting like she was the boss of everyone. She thought she could boss me around too, calling 911 on my little garage sale. But guess what? She didn't know the cops were already watching her. She thought she was so smart, but she never saw her own trouble coming. It's funny how that works, right? The person who shouts the loudest might be hiding the biggest secret. I keep thinking about it now. Karen walked around our neighborhood like she owned it. She told us what to do: move your car, fix your grass, follow her rules. But all that time, she was the one breaking the rules, selling fake bags and tricking people for money. She didn't think anyone would find out. She didn't think she'd get caught. But she did. And when those handcuffs went on her wrists, all her loud words didn't matter anymore. She couldn't talk her way out of that. It makes me wonder, maybe the people who act big and tough are just scared of being found out. Next time you meet someone like Karen, here's what you can do: just smile and wait. Don't argue, don't fight, just watch. They might be digging their own hole, like Karen did. She called the police to get me in trouble, but she ended up in the back of their car instead. It's like she built a trap for herself without even knowing it. I didn't have to do anything, she did it all on her own. That's the cool part. Sometimes you don't need to push back. You can just let them trip over their own feet. This whole crazy day taught me something big. People who judge others or act mean might not be as perfect as they pretend. Karen looked at my garage sale like it was a crime, but she was the real crook. It's a good reminder: don't let loud voices scare you. Stay calm, do your thing, and let the truth come out. It always does, one way or another. For me, that truth came with flashing lights and a patrol car. For Karen, it came with a big surprise she'll never forget. I'm still smiling about it. My garage sale turned into the wildest day ever, and I didn't even plan it. Karen's gone now, her house is for sale, and the neighborhood feels quieter. Maybe she learned something too, wherever she is. Maybe she'll think twice before being so bossy next time. And me? I'll keep having garage sales whenever I want. No one's stopping me now. So, what's your favorite part of the story? Was it when Karen called 911, thinking she'd won? Or when the detectives showed up and turned it all around? Maybe it's the clapping from my neighbors when she got taken away. Tell me in the comments, I really want to know. Oh, and stick around, because I've got more crazy tales to share. Life's full of surprises, and I can't wait to tell you what happens next. Keep watching, okay? You never know when another Karen might pop up and what secrets she might be hiding.